Did you play on Disney Channel?
Nickelodeon.
Oh, it doesn't Nickelodeon. What show is it again?
Declassified School Survival.
Oh yeah, you were that kid on it, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. Tylor Chase.
I remember you.
That man is Tylor Chase. He was a prominent child actor, and he was most known for his role as Martin Quirley on Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, a hit Nickelodeon show in the late 2000s. But fast forward to today, Tylor was found in a viral TikTok where someone found him homeless, broke, and looks to be dealing with heavy addiction and mental illness. With everyone on social media hoping he gets help, as someone so iconic in our childhood is now brought up and making everyone wonder what exactly went wrong. And this is a common sentiment where in the child acting industry, once they start to become adults, they hit rock bottom. Some never get heard of again and fizzle out the industry, while other actors deal with terrible mental health and depression, which leads to these actors then abusing substances, and this is how stories like Tylor Chase come about. I wanted to take a dark look into the reasons why so many child stars end up like this, and it's devastating. Before I look at the horror stories of how child actors turn out, I thought it'd be a good idea to look at some success stories so I can compare and understand what's really going wrong with these child actors. Leonardo DiCaprio, objectively one of the best actors of this generation, started off his acting career as a child as well. He first appeared on commercials in the late 80s. All the way from the bottom, he was doing hundreds of auditions and landing no substantial work. Until the early 90s, he would gain some traction as he joined the show Growing Pains in 1991. At the age of 17, he wouldn't stay too long in this sitcom and then move on to movies where he would get some huge opportunities, like the one he got in the movie This Boy's Life with Robert De Niro, along with What's Eating Gilbert Grape in 1993. In that movie, Leonardo played a boy who had terrible developmental disabilities, and Leo, being completely healthy with no disabilities, played this character so real and so believable that it's said to this day to be one of the best child performances we've ever seen.
Mama, stop it now! Stop, Mama! Stop it!
Now let's compare Leo to the early career of Drake Bell. Drake as well started off as a child actor, doing commercials and having random appearances on TV. His career would then take a huge turn when he would join Nickelodeon at the ripe age of 12 to be a cast member on The Amanda Show. The Nickelodeon system was one that was really strong in the early 2000s. Since it's a network that's dedicated to children and teenager television, it's easy for them to maintain talent and use them for all their shows. That's what happened to Drake. After being a solid cast member on The Amanda Show for a couple years, he would get his own show in 2004 called Drake and Josh. As by season 3, it was one of Nickelodeon's highest rated shows. Drake and Josh would end in 2007 after 4 seasons. Meanwhile, Drake is only 21 years of age. After the show ended, his contract with Nickelodeon would too, and would end his time at Nickelodeon. Leonardo DiCaprio and Drake Bell went on to have 2 massively different careers. Drake could never establish himself as a serious actor after Drake and Josh. Meanwhile, Leo made cinematic history and won countless awards. It's pretty obvious that the child networks like Nickelodeon and Disney have a clear ecosystem that is great, but can also be detrimental. Because once your youth wears off, Nickelodeon is already auditioning for the next child star to take your place, and your value as an actor to them is completely gone. A documentary recently came out in 2024 called Quiet on Set: The Dark Side of Kids TV. It exposed to us the twisted and disgusting environment of what was Nickelodeon Studios in the late 90s and early 2000s. Anyone around Nickelodeon in the early 2000s shared their heartbreaking stories of how the biggest child TV network was operating, with a man named Dan Schneider being at the forefront of this controversy. You probably recognize his name at the end credits of all your favorite TV shows as a kid. Dan was the mastermind behind all of our favorite shows, Drake and Josh, iCarly, Victorious. This documentary series would reveal how sick and deranged Dan and other staff at Nickelodeon truly were. Watching back old Nickelodeon shows and skits, you get to see that Dan would take advantage of his young actors and actresses by putting them in inappropriate scenes that were brushed off as normal at the time. We would also be aware to his foot fetish that is really weird, and many sexual innuendos being displayed throughout all his work, all being done on a show made by and for kids. Dan would also get exposed for treating his staff very poorly, as writers have came out and said that he was inappropriate and even sexually abusing them, where he would allegedly show favoritism towards white men for career growth at Nickelodeon. Dan Schneider's damaging culture at Nickelodeon wouldn't just stop there, as what went down on sets would completely ruin the lives of child actors at Nickelodeon.
Named Noseboy. Naturally, I'm in a superhero costume, which is just tights and underwear. You know, what was different about this, they gave me a prosthetic nose, like an enlarged nose, and they put this same nose on the costume.
I can't think victims!
3 Nickelodeon employees, Jason Michael Handy, Brian Peck, and Azelle Channel. 3 convicted child predators that all worked at Nickelodeon within a 6-year span. From 1999 to 2005, Jason Michael Handy was a production assistant at Nickelodeon from 1999 to 2004. Jason was in charge of managing the kids on set and making sure they were safe. Unironically, the children were in the worst supervision they could possibly be under. Everyone on set loved Jason, and they thought he was a nice, genuine guy with a lot of innocent energy. Until the FBI got involved and got a nod on Jason. His house would get raided by the FBI in 2003, where we would discover what Jason's true intentions were at Nickelodeon, and they were a nightmare.
Division officers have arrested the suspected child predator, 28-year-old Jason Michael Handy of Sherman Oaks. Handy has connections to the TV industry.
Over 10,000 images of children, including 1,768 images of young girls in erotic poses.
The officer said we found Ziploc bags, each one with a girl's name on it, and each Ziploc bag had some kind of token in it. And she said the reason I'm calling is we found a Ziploc bag with Brandy's name on it. And there were letters from her in that Ziploc bag.
Jason was a monster. He completely took advantage of the responsibility he had at Nickelodeon on set, and did this in the most sick and utterly disgraceful way possible. He would plead no contest and be guilty on all charges, with having to serve 6 years in prison for his crimes. Meanwhile, this is the same man that was roaming free around Nickelodeon. There was a strict rule of no parents were allowed on set at Nickelodeon. Jason was the one responsible for looking over them while their parents were gone. An extremely vile look into the reality of what the workplace was like for a child actor. And it unfortunately wouldn't end there. Brian Peck was a dialogue coach at Nickelodeon under Dan Schneider's regime. He worked on the Amanda Show, where he began to work with Drake Bell very closely. Drake, trying to come onto the acting scene and stay with the network, was open and motivated to work with Brian, as Brian was pretty notable in the industry and even worked with Leonardo DiCaprio. While working together, Brian would begin to have an abnormal fascination with Drake. Brian would follow him and go to his concerts where his band went, offered to host Drake's birthday party at his house, being completely oblivious to the fact that he was a 40-year-old man trying to casually have a relationship with a 15-year-old kid. Drake's dad would notice this, and he wouldn't like it, so he would attempt to protect Drake from Brian and keep him away as much as he could. Regrettably, Drake, being young and naive, would get manipulated by Brian. Brian would try and convince Drake that his dad is trying to ruin his career by stepping into their dynamic, which would lead Drake to cutting his own dad off for the time being. Right before Drake was getting his headline show in Drake and Josh, he would have the realization that he was getting sexually assaulted and abused by Brian Peck. One night, Drake is at his girlfriend's house, and Brian thought he was gonna see Drake this night. But Drake made different plans, and Brian, out of rage, would then non-stop call Drake's phone, belligerently and out of control. Drake's girlfriend's mom would luckily witness this behavior and report it to Drake's mom and the police. The FBI would get involved, and they would have the idea to have Drake attempt to call Brian and have Brian admit his crimes on the phone, which Brian ended up loosely doing, which would end up him being guilty and sentence him to 16 months in jail. It gets even more disturbing once you find out that after Brian served his 16 months and got freed from prison, Brian Peck would have zero problems returning to the entertainment industry. Despite now being a registered sex offender, he would join Disney to work on The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, being exactly where you don't want a man like Brian to be, working around kids again, giving us a glimpse of how frightening the corruptness of Hollywood truly was. That despite all that Brian Peck did, he was welcomed back with open arms into the field like nothing happened. The workplace for child actors was not protected in the 90s and 2000s, being a major reason why countless have been traumatized and scarred by their experiences in child television. And due to all this, things wouldn't get easier for them when it came to life after Stardom. The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody was also one of the most successful cable shows of the 2000s. The famous twins Dylan and Cole Sprouse would become superstars by the age of 12 and be Disney's cash cows for over 6 years. By the time they were filming their last season of The Sweet Life, Cole Sprouse was getting tired of being a child actor. The show became exhausting and he had little to no passion in it anymore. Cole wanted to go to college and live a normal life, because up until that point, his life was anything but normal. The twins would agree to do The Sweet Life on Deck, which is where they would look to end the show, and then left Disney to enroll in NYU. Cole studied archaeology and Dylan studied video game design. There have also been a lot of horror stories on parents and management ruining the child's life, as some parents don't look at their children as their actual children. They actually look at them as golden tickets to fame and riches, while managing all their money, and seeing the child's success can sometimes go to their head and really inflate their egos. So instead of looking at the child as just a typical kid, these parents will make decisions for the betterment of their career and not them as a person. Which is why it became a common practice for child stars to get emancipated from their parents, like how Macaulay Culkin did. The Home Alone child star's parents were in a custody battle after he became worth millions of dollars. Macaulay's dad, who was also his manager, was said to be extremely controlling and abusive, trying to take advantage of him and his career, which led to him emancipating from both of his parents at the age of 15. Having to take life into your own hands at such a young age would definitely traumatize anyone, let alone a child who's not even done developing. The amount of conflict that these child stars face during their rise to fame is something that is really troubling to deal with. That you can't even trust your own parents in this industry. And that's when the child star realizes that their identity was never formed and instead was put all into a career that ended up fizzling out, and your whole youth has been wasted making sacrifices and putting up with all these obstacles, building a career that means nothing by the age of 21 for the rest of your life. This is when mental health struggles, addiction, and vices kick in. They begin to deteriorate. Drake Bell would suffer after his time at Nickelodeon. He would file for bankruptcy in 2014, where he turned to alcoholism, substance abuse, and any other way he could cope with his trauma. He would then get arrested in 2021 for endangering a minor involving inappropriate communication with a 15-year-old that he allegedly met online and went to one of his concerts. He pled guilty and ended up doing 2 years probation. The victim has become the abuser, which is one of the most tragic things you could see happen to a child star. Drake Bell, Amanda Bynes, Jeanette McCurdy, Demi Lovato, Orlando Brown, and now Tylor Chase. This isn't just a trend, it's the reality of the suffering these child actors all faced. They were thrown into an industry at a time that had no protection and safety, giving their whole childhood to their acting career, making it a scary and sad realization knowing that everyone we watched growing up, all of our favorite shows and child stars giving us so many great memories and so much entertainment. Meanwhile, a lot of it, the feeling wasn't mutual, and that the people behind our screens were really trapped in a world where they couldn't process the destruction of what was happening to them. And now we see the dark side of working in child television on all of them, as new news reports and stories show us how they are living today in 2025. A real understanding that everything we watched wasn't kids having fun, living the dream. We were watching the corruption of people in power, using the youth of children for money, and even worse, evil. And the impact it's left will be seen on them forever, with no one coming to help.